Hi.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday.
Thank you so much.
How long, I mean, I don't even know when we saw each other in real life. It's hard to even imagine seeing people in real life for the past year and a half, but like we haven't seen each other in real life in a long time. Just thank you so much, like for, staying in touch and being you and, but also being willing to do this conversation with me.
Sure, my pleasure. Yeah.
So I
So,
was trying to piece it together. I don't know where we met. I don't know how we connected. I can't
oh,
even
I have the answer to
remember.
that. Shoot, I might get a little twisted, but we had done work with you while I was at the American Friends Service Committee. Um,
Okay.
and Janine Schwab was like our program associate and was doing the project coordination on the It's My Life
It's my life.
resource.
It's my
Yes.
life.
But
Yeah.
somehow prior to that, I think we had somehow had connected with your team. That's how we knew about you. And I can't remember what that first touch was, but it was somewhere before that, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah. And somebody else who was there, oh shoot, I'm gonna forget his name. He's married to Jane Golden.
Oh, Tony Horizon.
Tony. So
Yes. Yeah.
we did a different project with Tony. And I
Mhm.
think that was the conduit to the It's My Life. And then you and I, and then we met, and then you
Yeah.
did some
Yeah.
projects. You did
Yes.
some
Right.
design projects as a
Yes.
field
Yes.
team person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So wow, long time. So
Yes.
I love what you've been doing on social media. I love like being a steward of positive messaging and but pushing people to be their best.
Yes.
I, I recognize it, and I think doing it in a form that's like fun and engaging, and like you, like really, I don't know you that well. We don't know each other that well, but it's like how it comes through. Our personalities come through. So
Yeah.
I think it's great. Have you been getting a good reaction to all the like pearls of
Yeah.
wisdom that you share?
Over the years, I think more so because I started this ministry, I guess, for lack of a better word, and as a Quaker, one might call it that, and so I have at
Yeah.
times called it that. I think it is kind of that. But it's also like being a Quaker. I was equating it to if you've ever been into a Quaker meeting where and the quieter Quakers versus the more programmed Quakers, but the Quakers who just sit in silence, and somebody steps up or stands up and says, whatever, whatever, whatever. And I kind of feel like we call that vocal ministry. And I kind of feel like this is my ministry in the sense that I'm waking up and I'm saying, what's on my mind? What's on my heart? What do I need to share with the world? But not really, because, I'm really focused on what do I need to hear? Like what's in it for me, honestly. And then maybe if it transmits to others, like what's on my heart, and that might help others. So that's been, and it started with Donald Trump. I blame him. It was sort of my social media response to let me not be as engaged with the bickering and the fighting with people
Mhm.
over these political things. And if you see my social media enough to know, I can do that. But I found myself in this spiral of, downward spiral, and I wanted to remove myself from the toxicity of that. So I said, if I at least post one positive message or some kind of message that makes people think per day, and I don't ever go back to my Facebook, then I will have satisfied the need to be on Facebook, and hopefully, that will have done the thing in terms of like this messaging thing. And I
Yeah.
haven't stopped
Yeah.
in 5 years. Yeah.
It's so great. It's also a commitment to like a practice, right? So being in practice, and I know that you're a musician. I think you're also maybe a martial arts person or a physical.
No, I
No?
do a lot of working out. It's not
Yeah,
martial
yeah.
arts, but
So there's like, but it's a commitment to a practice, right?
yeah, yeah,
And that, slowly but surely the way that things change and the things that get moved forward, and maybe they don't even get moved forward, maybe they get protected, or maybe they get made real, like
yeah,
made real by just constantly doing them.
yeah,
I think there's a real correlation there to like, this whole concept of artistry and activism, but really the idea of making a better world. Like how do
yeah,
we, as human beings that are here, like how are we part of it? How do we like, listen to others, but how do we bring whatever it is that we bring? And I love that you actually acknowledged that it's, for you and for others. Cause I think that's what the core of like social impact is that often we're doing things for in relation to others. It's kind of like I think of it as, when you're having company and then you clean your own house.
Yes.
And you should have done it all along, and you know that it
Yes.
would have been better for you if you had been
Yes.
cleaning as you go along. But having those like moments of being in a social relationship with others, it brings out our best.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
can. It can.
It can. It can. It can. I mean, kind of back to the Enneagram for a hot minute. One of the things I learned was that this three energy that I transmit, which is fluid, has healthy and unhealthy aspects to it. And
Mhm.
so, when am I being my best number three? And how am I being my best number three? And when am I being my most toxic, nasty number three? And we all have that. If we believe in Enneagram or not, we all have that self. We know it. We know we do. When am I like the best person I know I can be, and when am I that person that nobody wants to be around? And I can tell
Yeah.
you those moments in time and what my
Yeah.
triggers are and all of that. And I think that, so my art, my aphorisms, my activism, I think, is all designed to kind of be thinking in that, why am I here kind
Yeah.
of way? Like,
Yeah.
what's my purpose in life, and what am I supposed to be doing right now with that time? And
Oh,
that's
it's great.
something I think a lot about time, even though I try to, I'm no guru, and I listen to a lot of them. And I aspire to be one, I should say, but time, like that's the ephemeral thing. Like, it's not real, but it is, right? And so that's kind of how I moved through my all of these different things: art, activism, social media,
Yeah.
ministry. Like, where am I at in time? What,
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. That actually came up this week. We do this during the pandemic. I started hosting just on Wednesday mornings at 10 o'clock, like just come and be together for communication support group is what I called it. And it was mostly that I knew, I could feel people really shutting down communication and freaking out, especially at an organizational level, like not wanting to continue on with fundraisers and not wanting to tell the story because it felt wrong to do that in the middle of this like crisis. And in many cases it might have been, or during the summer during Black Lives Matter, to like pause and not know what your statement was on anti-racism because you hadn't actually been doing that work. That's totally appropriate, right? But I think people needed support in that moment. And so every Wednesday we started just getting together and thinking about different theories of communication and what, especially in the nonprofit world, because you're in that world with me too. And
Mm.
we know that that's a very specific animal. I'm going to call it an animal because it's like an animal. And it it's like we know some of those things, and we can all get together and kind of support each other with a common language and common understanding. And we
Mhm.
just continued it. Like I still do it every Wednesday. And this week we talked about the idea of cultivating time, money, and skill, like
Mhm.
how you can actually make magic with those things, and you can actually be in different moments. And we all know that. We all have had moments where time has gone by very quickly, and we all have had moments where it's like the longest thing in our lives that we wish would either not end or something.
Mhm.
And I find it very interesting that people continue to put this like box around time as if it's a consistent thing, because it's such an interesting thing to explore. And I
Yeah.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that you're looking at that lens.
Yeah, I've been delving into. I guess it's been going on 2 years now. I somehow discovered books by Dr. Joe Dispenza,
Oh, I
who
love
is
him.
right.
I
So you
love
know who I'm
him.
talking about. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess for anybody watching this, he's an amazing guru in my mind, but person who really brings to the average layperson, the idea of how brain coherence and heart coherence, what they are from a science-based, physiology-based level, what they do, what those things do, what it does to your body, what it does to your consciousness. And there's a bridge between the way he communicates that stuff and spirituality, or sometimes some religious stuff, but he doesn't go into that because he doesn't have to. And I found that all of the spiritual, because I'm a seeker, all the things that I sought spiritually and knew, or sort of knew and did, or sort of did, now I'm understanding the science of it better, because I guess that side of my brain was able to latch on to his teachings in the way he's saying the same things I learned when I was in these various schools of thought. But it just wasn't clicking, and the things weren't actually happening, or if they did happen, it was accidental, not intentional, not on purpose. And I couldn't recreate it. And now I feel like the magic that I'm able to experience, that I call magic, is only because most people don't know how to do what I feel like I've been able to tap into and discover how to do. So it feels magical.
It does feel magical. And it's also, I think it's this unique, I think it's human, right? It's like this thing that we do, it's human centered, it's human created. It's like we're creating and experiencing at the same time. And science is something we create and experience at the same time. And, all of that, it doesn't mean that it's not real or that it is real or any of those things, just because it's always going to be through a lens of our comprehension, right?
Yes, right.
And so the idea of time being something, and I think we learned a lot during the pandemic. I don't know about you, but, we learned a lot about time and, what that means and what we need to be focused on. And is everybody in your family and extended family healthy and safe? And
yes, everybody is. We've gotten through it. The virus did hit 2 members of my family, both of who've come through for the most part. My younger brother, and my mother, who my brother lives with. My brother lives with my parents. My father didn't get it, so I guess that was a good thing. My mother got it, was asymptomatic, so that was another good thing, as an older person. And my brother he got the worst of it, so he came through okay. I don't know that he has any lingering issues. I don't believe so. He hasn't shared that he has.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a unbelievable situation. Where do your folks live?
They live over in Jersey, where I'm originally from. Yeah, South Jersey.
I was gonna say one of the calming things about Joe Dispenza, my husband's from Jersey, and it's like he has this like Jersey vibe to him, that makes it very calming to like listen to him, which is very funny. If you're not from the East Coast, like you would not understand why that is actually a calming.
Exactly.
Great. So, the theme, I mean, we already started talking a little bit about it, but the theme for all of these conversations is artistry and activism. And we're exploring them independently if people are really focused on one or the other, but you are one of those people that combines those pretty deeply. So how are you thinking about that these days? How are you thinking about how our artistry and our activism can be applied for the issues of now?
I've thought a lot about this before the question came, because we've been experiencing this for before Joe Biden became president. We had been experiencing this amazing amount of energy that was in opposition to Donald Trump, and creative energy, right? So for at least the last 4 years or so, I've been paying attention to the different things, noticing that, for example, when A Tribe Called Quest came out with their latest album, was at the time, We Got This, I think is the name. I'm blanking on the name of the album, but there was a key song that was talking about Donald Trump, and a lot of the themes in the album were talking about the political moment at hand. And I was like, yes, finally, protest music, right? Like,
Mm.
and maybe not finally, because honestly, there had been that before, you know, here and there in pockets, especially if you talk about hip hop, for that matter, underground hip hop, but in other genres as well. But like in a more mainstream context, to have them, you know, as a group do the messaging that they did through that music was right on time. And I've seen other artists, actors, etc., come out with their creative mindsets. I mean, we've seen movies, I think, that you know, are like maybe 6 degrees away from our current reality, that people are veiling, this is what we're talking about, but we're not talking about Donald Trump or America or whatever. I feel like what I'm worried about for the next few years is a distillation of that people, it's going to get watered down, because we don't have to fight a Donald Trump anymore. We, you know, as activists, and I say that in the sense that I see activism as in whatever context you want to consider being an activist, but mostly as being challenging power, right? Or challenging the structures of power. And when you have a lot of people feeling like, okay, we don't have to challenge the structures of power the way we did before, or maybe even at all, then we become maybe annoyed, we become lazy, we take our eyes off of the wheel, we crash into a brick wall, and we realize, oh, the next despot is here. Oh, what happened? How did this go wrong? Because we weren't doing the work of continuing the pushing, even of those that we prefer to be in those positions of power, push them. And I think through art, you know, that there are more than subtle ways to have those messages be laid at the feet of people who hold power, regardless of their, you know, in our sense, you know, whether they're right or they're left,
Right.
or somewhere in the middle, you know. But that the messages that artists have the ability to craft are can be inherently part of moving culture, and so that's what I'm hoping for. But I'm a little
I know.
scared.
I wonder, I mean, that made me think about a little bit of if this moment of kind of manipulation of what is truth and what isn't truth gives us an opportunity to also look at who's behind the curtain. Because actually, the way that I've been thinking about it lately, especially with everything that happened, you know, with the insurgents and QAnon and everything that's happening with communication, literally like words being spoken and people having different interpretations and versions of those words. As a communicator, I'm very like perplexed by that. And it's not surprising, it's connected to power, right? And the people who are in power get to kind of control the narrative. That's always been the case. Now it's even some like really extreme version of that. And I do wonder if continuing, not in like a conspiracy, not replicating the conspiracy theory version, because I think me personally, I'm feeling like we're missing opportunities to create the future we want by getting stuck with these like people that they've been trying forever to just keep us busy with the things. And we know that, we've known that, right? But I'm wondering if we have a Wizard of Oz moment here, maybe, to be like, oh yeah, there are a bunch of people. It may not be a bunch, it may be just like a handful of people who have been pushing the buttons and blinking, bleepy, bleepy behind the curtain to actually try to control the people who were perceived of as being in power and the culture that's in power. And I'm wondering about that. I'm wondering if this is if we can't be holding that up as an opportunity for creative people to be calling that out. It's so obscure and so unbelievable that it's almost hard to get your head around it, but it seems like that's the opportunity.
And I also feel like opportunities are probably going to be laid at our feet in an unfortunate way. That could be the next police violence situation that results in the death of a person of color, probably a Black person. and probably unarmed, and the outcry that will come from that, and the ways in which people will need to channel their energy in ways that we've seen happen with George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others. That we should have to do that, I think is the challenge. Like the work that we do should, and I believe is intended to mitigate, eliminate the possibility of those moments happening in the future. Yeah. But I think we know it's going to happen again.
Yeah.
And the same thing with war. We have a Democrat as president. We had a Republican as president. We could have another Republican as president or another Democrat as president in 4 more years. But war is a constant thing, regardless of party, for whatever reason, whether the United States is coming across as an aggressor or seeing itself as an intervener. War around the world is happening regardless of whether we're paying attention to it or not, and our country is involved in it. So many things. The water crisis.
How do you balance? Like I totally hear you, and I think that that's so important to keep in mind too, because it's not only one part of the equation of activism or artistry or any of that, right? It's the interconnection. It's how we galvanize all of that. How do you balance one thing that I really think of a lot is that we are, as artists, we are uniquely suited to be the Imagineers of what, we already know what it could look like. we don't have to, you ask any of us, like we're going to tell you exactly what it looks like. And it may be different versions, and it may be, but we also, as artists, typically, that are collaborative in some form or another, not always, but we can imagine the ideal, right? The ideal of the art movement or the activist movement, where people are all coming together and bringing their shoulder to shoulder anarchy in the best way possible, which is I'm bringing mine, you're bringing yours, we're going to make this happen. So I know that, we know that, I can see it, you can see it, we can all see it. How do you balance how much energy you put in, and a lot of this you talked about around your social media, but how much energy you're putting into actually making the future, actually imagining and creating and making the future as an artist, and responding and reacting to those things that are constant in the human, unfortunate human, war, violence, racism, all of those things. How do you balance where you put your energy?
Yeah, I feel like honestly, creatively and activist wise, there are times when I feel like my energy is split. There's the practical element, pandemic or otherwise, of signing petitions, showing up to rallies, lobbying whomever that may be, council people, congress people, et cetera, et cetera. I do a lot of, in my neighborhood particularly, I do a lot of what I consider to be quality of life kinds of things that very different from what the police department were considering quality of life things very recently. But I live in a marginalized community. I live in part of Southwest Philly, which is one of 30, as I heard from an employee of Philly 311, is considered one of the dirty 30, where it is renowned for illegal dumping, and the city gets to these issues when they get to it. So I do a lot of activism around making sure that my city council person, the streets department, et cetera, are being held accountable for what they're supposed to be doing, for the police department, what they're supposed to be doing on these occasions. So the difference between macro level, right, macro level, micro level.
Welcome to democracy, yeah.
And so when I come back to my art, I feel like, what am I, as a channel for some of that energy too, angst or anger or hope. I vacillate between, and I think the difference is between the emotion, because as I'm emoting creatively, it is one or the other. I'm happy, I'm I am feeling good. I'm feeling hope and positive. I'm probably
Mm.
spending more of my energy in the tangible sense when I create art in something that is cultural. And being Puerto Rican, there are a few cultural elements that I like to play around with, particularly that relate to my indigenous ancestry. When I'm a
Mm.
little bit more angsty and political minded, then I'm painting pictures of Lolita Lebron being escorted by the Capitol Police after having shot up Congress back in 1954, and or images of Don Albizu, who was the nationalist leader of the Puerto Rican independence movement for a time. And all of those things, like really trying to remember all of my art history classes and going to the museum and like, what does it mean when what is that image? Like we see the image, trying to be not just simply composition minded, but like, what is the message that I'm invoking or embedding into this image that I am creating? Whether it's a cultural image that relates mostly to like my heritage or something that's political, which also sort of relates to my heritage, but is a little bit more poignant and focused on a thing, a message I'm really trying to get across. And so
Yeah.
I feel like I'm being able to do that helps me balance, the difference between really being stuck in a place of despondency and despair, and but needing to have those moments of anger and frustration and
Yeah.
disappointment.
Yeah.
And I wrote a book that's probably like one of my latest projects, sort of latest.
Yeah.
It took me a while to get it out, and it's self-published, so it's not
Yeah.
picked up by a major publisher or anything, but I wrote it with the intention of, again, like, it's a futuristic novel. This is a potential future. I believe in the multiverse. So if we keep going down these paths that ignore climate change, here's what a reality that I created in my mind could look like. So
Sure.
I'm trying to warn people in my own way,
Yeah.
through the written word, as well as the different kinds of things you can't really see around my room, but are around here that reflect
Yeah.
work that I've done in a political context.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it is also, I think for myself to think of being an artist, it's like this human condition, right? And this like expressive thing. And I love that you identify the emotion, because that has been a really interesting outcome of the pandemic, is on one hand being completely disassociated with like emotion, and on the other being like thrown like so back into we're both in our 50s, and
Yes.
so it's like sometimes you're just like, oh, I don't kind of have emotion right now. I'm just
Yes.
like, oh, so much emotion that I've had in my life. I'm just not gonna. And it's been a really interesting moment to get back in touch with emotion, to think about emotion. So thanks for reminding me of that, being kind of hmm, I'm going to connect it back to time, because emotion can be a lens that tells you something, right? About like, okay, I'm feeling this emotion, and this might be what I'm experiencing, or this might be telling me something here. I also heard recently of thinking of time, that time is only a training device for dealing with time. That you don't actually need time forever. You only need time when you're in training to figure out like how long it takes you to do things, or to like, I'm not sure I fully understand it, but it spoke to me. I was like, oh, yeah, like there are things that I don't need to plan my time around, because we're, like I said, we're both in our 50s. There are things that we know how to do,
Right.
and they've been getting more and more and more. And I think that's one of the benefits of time, is that you can actually see one step at a time, like your social media practice. You said 5 years you've been doing that now.
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah. Yeah,
So now
straight.
there's a
Yeah.
body of work. There's
Yeah.
all this stuff, and it's contributed to even like you and how you're interpreting the world. And like, so I thought that was a really interesting way to think about time, that time is like, it's only a tool. It's just a tool.
I think I have to agree with that in the sense that I agree. I'm a little confused, but I get something about that because I heard recently also, time for me is associated with memory, and we often say, my memory, I have memory, but memory is not a thing we have. Memory is an action. It's a thing. It's an active thing. So we don't really have memory. It's an action thing. And in that sense, it relates to time, right? So time is fluid. Time is always happening. And therefore, what we call memory, I feel, is like those, and back to emoting too. It's like this triangulation of these things. That moment in time where we're able to have this moment where we're emoting whatever energy. A loved one passes away, and you find out, however you find out, in that moment, you're never ever going to be the same. And for the rest of your life, you will probably always remember the moment you got that phone call or you read that letter. That emotion that triggers that memory, or we think that we call memory, that moment in time is our emotion being so active that it marks what we call
It stamps
time.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think that there's also time. I was thinking something similar. I was like, the time is also a way that we mark common understanding in a social context.
Mhm.
So, and I, now that you're talking about it, I think that emotion is one of those things that can, common emotion or a similar emotion may be the root of when people do remember something happening the same way at a certain time, is that they shared a similar emotion around it or something. I don't know. I'm
Mhm.
curious about that now.
Mhm.
But I think that's also part of aging, is like, which things do I remember correctly and which things am I
Right.
like just making up, and which things am I not, like, am I totally lost it? So speaking of time, this is a 25th anniversary moment for us. This is why we're doing these conversations with people that I just wanted to like celebrate people and the work and the connections and being part of something together. And Social Impact Studios is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year.
Mhm.
And that's why we're kind of launching in July. We're going to be launching 25 like weeks of celebration to like round out
Nice.
the year. So this will be one of our very first kind of celebrations and videos along that way. But I'm curious, as you, and I know you just had a birthday, and I hope you don't mind that I've been outing you as being in your 50s. You
Not at
were very
all.
public. You were very public about it.
I'm pretty proud of it,
Um,
yes.
yeah, it's a great thing. It's a great thing. And so, like, what are your reflections on, 25 years overall? What
Mm.
about your journey, stands out to you?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, I think about it in the sense that, I turned 53, so I'm roughly 50, right? 50 something, as they would say. And 25 years ago, I was a younger person. And, I remember the challenges of the day. I was particularly thinking about how much George Floyd's passing, the way he passed, made an impact on the nation, perhaps the world, in a way that I thought the Rodney King video 25 or so some years ago was going to do. I thought back then, as a younger person, witnessing this and having seen the history before that, I born in 1968, product of the Summer of Hate, as they called it, and
Mm.
Robert Kennedy was killed that year. Dr. King was killed that year. All kinds of stuff popping off. Cities burning. And then growing up as a '70s, '80s kid and thinking, oh, I'm watching Miami Vice on TV, thinking that was ancient history.
Yeah.
But then having moments like later in life, in the '80s, in the '90s, even witnessing gross inequities. I'm hopeful that the crescendo of energy that we saw recently is one that can be sustained, And
Yeah.
somebody, a good friend of mine, Matt Gwynn, used to talk about the preaching to the choir, and how some people would say, you know, you don't have to preach to the choir. You know, when we're talking about activists and people who need to be movement minded or are movement minded and need to be engaged, we need to talk to all the other people. And I feel like when we say things like that, what comes back to me is this idea of no, the preaching to the choir. If you're the choir, what does the choir do? The choir meets all the time or regularly. They practice
2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah,
they practice.
they practice so that on Sunday morning or whenever they meet to perform, they're doing the thing. So are we really the choir? Am I preaching to the choir? Because if I was preaching to the choir, the choir would not be upset with me. The choir gets why we are doing this.
Are repeating ourselves and reinforcing the messages and holding each other and reminding each other. I think also in the world of like social impact communications, that there's and in our culture, the American culture, like one reason that we do what we do and have done it for so long is that I actually think that the only like universal language in the United States is advertising. It's like, we live in this, I mean, other than love and like real human beings, but like the thing that people know how to suss up and know how to like really work within, because we're a capitalist market driven culture that is systemically been designed that way, that's like part of that the public narrative has been not co-opted, it's representing exactly what was planned the whole time and what has been like perpetuated, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really, I have a similar kind of experience in our work where people are like, well, things don't have to be designed and things don't have to be so messaged to get out there and to get people to act. And it's like, well, no, they maybe shouldn't have to be, but we are human beings that respond and need like reinforcement and consistency, and not even consistency, just reinforcement and beauty and like being reminded of something.
That kind of goes back to the touch point relationship here when we were doing that book together, with the intention of really trying to telegraph to young people, young adults, that there were many more opportunities that could fill their need for money for college, travel the world, that the military was offering. And not to necessarily like piss on the military, but to say, hey, we know you're not necessarily going to hear all of the things that you could hear from them. So here's a resource that's not exhaustive. Let's think about a way, in which we can put this in the hands of young people, young adults, and have them say, yeah, I'll read this. And it took work. It took intentionality. It took, our ability to be able to connect with that generation and that cohort of people we were trying to reach. And honestly, when we were done, we loved the product, by the way. I think if you remember, we said we loved it. We got so much great feedback. I don't know if we ever told you that, but we got so much great feedback from people, young people particularly, who were in the field and getting access to this resource. Right. We ultimately couldn't keep it on the shelves. I mean, it was, we got to a point where we had to figure out another distribution method. And this was, with Tony Hariza being an agent for that for us. It was an amazing thing, but it took intentionality. It took really understanding how are we going to, this message, this, ephemeral thing, we want you to think about these things. How do we put that into this nut that we knew was never going to be able to contain all of it anyway? And it was great.
That's so good. I'm so glad to hear that. We had a blast doing it. That was designed by Melinda Essig, one of our champion designers, if I remember correctly. And we loved it, and it's so beautiful, and it's actually still in our studio. We're now over at where the Vox Populi Collective is at
Oh, okay.
on
Yeah.
11th, right by the rail park. But it's like it's still one of the things that when you walk into our studio, it's like a display item because we love it
Nice.
so much.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, I think the idea that it's not, it's we have so much work to do. Like, why limit? Why think that we can do it perfectly? Why think that it's going to be the all and end all be all? That's what creative work and craft. I think the idea of craft, what I'm hearing from you, is
Hmm.
like it takes care, it takes craft, it takes artistry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what's next for you?
What's next for me? I have a few different projects. Part of it is the three energy, I suppose, my Enneagram stuff, or my Gemini energy. Um, at least that's what I blame it on. But I've always got a creative project that I'm juggling, and I feel like, I have a few paintings over here. I have some stuff over there that I will get to, and I have a collector that I might need to get some stuff to sooner than
I was
later.
gonna
But
say that's called being an artist, like
yeah,
having a lot of things going on.
but my
And if
biggest
you have a
thing,
collector, they might like push you a little bit.
yes, exactly.
Calm
Yeah,
down. Yeah.
I have been pushed. I guess my biggest thing is, well, one of my biggest things is the book that I mentioned that I had written, the
Yeah. Could
novel,
you say
essentially.
the title of, and we'll make sure to, like, if there's a
Sure.
link or anything, we can
It's
share that.
it's called Kymatica, book one, and it's spelled Kymatica. And if you Google Kymatica, you might come up with a bunch of different versions, but it's on Amazon. So the easiest way to probably search for it would be to search for it on Amazon. And it is sort of a dystopian slash utopian, futuristic, coming of age novel. With being a person of color, my characters are people of color centric. The world that has been created is a futuristic world that has the haves and the have-nots. One of the things that we didn't learn, as this world was created, was how to deal with the have and the have-not situation. But the world was saved by this amazing sort of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs kind of person, this woman who basically was a billionaire tech mogul, but who had some insider information about the coming calamity, and created these underwater cities that people were able to retreat to. But in the process of creating this new society, she also created a caste system because there were people who survived the climate change calamity. So this is also a message about climate change and the possibilities of that, but also a treatise on the human condition. As much as she tried to, be a Noah's Ark and let's do a restart, 300 years later, we're back to the same old fighting. And there are survivors who aren't a part of the society that are fighting with the members of the society that were created. It's got a lot of sci-fi, futuristic, Afrofuturistic kinds of themes. And my goal is to actually I'm working with a friend who is going to help me get it to a point where maybe we can develop it as a motion comic, or a graphic novel. Yeah.
Ooh, oh, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
would you be doing, because I know you also do like film work, like you do a lot, like, so you'd be doing some of that with it?
Yeah. I have another friend I'd like to chat with. Nothing's ever guaranteed, but to be able to use your network and say to people, hey, I know you have, people over at Netflix, and I know they're looking for talent, and can you help me pitch this to them? And if that doesn't work, to be able to put it on our own platform and to do what others have been doing. I would love to see this book become picked up, maybe A-list actors want to star in it, like that kind of thing. I would love to see that happen. And if that never happened, I still have to finish book 2. So, I feel like I'm the J.K. Rowling of Puerto Rico right now, or of New Eureka, New
Don't
Eureka.
be entirely like J.K. Rowling right now.
Oh, true that. Yes, wrong person
Yeah.
to pick. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the Harry Potter thing came to mind. But my goal is to really have a series of books similar to the Harry Potter mindset, that we can continue to build on this world and expand on the themes hundreds of years into our future, and whatever other platforms it falls into. I will have gratitude. I have gratitude for having been able to put it out there, and gratitude for the steps I'm taking right now to get it to another place.
That's so awesome. I mean, I think that is kind of also the kernel of artistry and activism, is doing something because you're called to do it and you're gonna do it. And if it also can be something that's expansively impactful for a lot of other people and be something really cool and big, that's awesome. But it's not the idea of the end that is the thing that keeps it moving. It's the doing of it. And I hear that in your voice. I hear that you're gonna that's a call, and that's just something that you're putting out in the world.
If Lego came to me and said, "Hey, we'd like to do the Lego movie version," I'm not going to say no. I mean, I might say no. I don't know what they're going to offer me, right? So let's talk about it. Let me call my lawyer. But I'm going to listen. I'm going to talk to them. I think this of much of the art, particularly, like street art, is for the love, and people don't get paid for that art unless they're necessarily attached to like a collaborative, that there are paid artists to do these things. But often, the kind of creative works that come out into the activist consciousness, or the movement world, is for the love. And I am not opposed to people being paid for creating art and paying themselves for creating art.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think the distinction is that artists, anybody who is making anything in the world, whether it's work or whatever, that they get to determine their level of value, the equity value on it, where value of love, value through money, those are the artist, the person, the creator, the maker, the worker, they get to determine that. It's when there's a cultural presumption, or even worse, of actual person in power that is like clamping down this concept of a starving artist, or, oh, well, artists aren't supposed to make money, therefore it's supposed to be for love, therefore you shouldn't expect money, and therefore we're not going to pay you. That's a total oppression, and that's not right. So I think that sometimes artists and activists have internalized that to a point that we're not holding up a value of, no, it's valued. I may be choosing not to take money for it, but it doesn't mean that I'm not expecting some sort of like compensation here, like that this is an exchange of, and I always feel, and I think that's kind of perspective too. Like I always feel so sad when people are like, well, I'm an artist and I need to suffer and I'm supposed to not make any money. And, it's like, no, that's not okay. And same in the activist world. I mean, same, that's one reason why I started Social Impact Studios as a social enterprise and not as a nonprofit. I mean, the real reason was that I don't think we need to be competing for funding that's really necessary for basic, nonprofit stuff. Like if you're feeding people, if you're housing people, if you're education, like all the things that run society, I think that's where our money should be going. That's where our tax money should be going. That's where our nonprofit money should be going. I mean, in an ideal world, we wouldn't need nonprofits to be doing what they do, right?
Exactly.
That's a whole other interview. But I do think that the idea of like social enterprise is like, we do have an opportunity to model this idea of the marketplace and exchange and energy and self-fulfilled, like independent, business in certain ways. And I think there's a real importance for us to be saying that, like we can be leaders, we can be creative business people. And I know you have your own creative business, that is a model. So more power to
Yeah.
you for doing that, and
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
keeping all that up, because I think that is in, and I think that, we will be told, we have been told, and we will still be told, like, oh, you're doing too many things, you need to focus, you need to and I hope that in our old age here, that we both feel the yes and potential, the opportunities, the like saying yes to things and moving them forward. I hope
Yeah.
that for you.
Yeah, that's the plan. I recently learned a theme about how to focus and on projects and or aspirations and things like that. And the idea was to write down 25 of the things that you really want to do.
25.
25 things
That's
in your
our
life,
number today.
right?
Yes.
And then you take the top 6 of those things, whatever those things are, you circle them. Those are the top 6 things, and everything else, forget about it. Like, don't even put your attention to that. You've got 6 things now, and somebody like me, I might need just 6 things. And so, like, to be able to say, okay, out of the 25 things that I could be doing with my life at some point in time, and dissipating that energy to try and get to all those 25 things, and then maybe only getting to a few of those things well, let me focus on these really 6 important things. So
Right.
I haven't made my list yet, but I know that, like, my book and these other things are at, they're in that top 6. I just have to figure out, what are the other 25, so that I'm 100% certain that the things that I'm doing now that I feel are at the top of the list, I can say by doing this exercise, are literally those are the things. Yeah.
I don't know about you, but the thing that I would probably end up doing is also that those 25 would all be themed in some like 6 ways.
I like loopholes.
Yeah, but I think it's actually important to recognize that the one focus, there's one focus, and it's you being you.
Yeah.
Like, it's you, right? Yeah. Like, you are focused. You are you. I mean, I think we could all, that's a whole different thing. But I think too often in our culture, we're always like told we're not enough yet. And that we're spreading ourselves too thin, or that we're not, whatever. And I'm just gonna say, I see you. I see that you, maybe 6 is good, but it's going to be 6 facets of you. And I hope you'll find ways to push those.
Well, when Ryan Coogler calls me and says, hey, dude, let's do your movie, I'm going to feel, okay, I have the bandwidth, because I might have the resources to do these other things. But I think that's, I guess, to round it out, the starving artist thing is a thing, but this is a thing that I've applied in other ways in my life. The paintings that I haven't gotten to in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, it's fine. I know I'll get to them. I have my prioritization of things, and then I say, I'm going to give at least 5 to 10 minutes of my energy on these things. And as I do that, I progress, and then I might stop. I might say, I can't move on this painting anymore. I just can't. I don't know. I don't want to push it. Let me stop. Let me give it a break. I'm going to pick up another thing, and I'm going to give myself 5 or more minutes, per day. So the focus of being able to say, as I am, juggling so many things, that I do have the ability to be focused on any one thing at any one time. And,
of course. You wouldn't be where you wouldn't be where you were if you weren't able to do that. Yeah. So what is I'm asking everybody at the end of this, what is your wish for the next 25 years?
My wish for the next 25 years includes the fact that full disclosure happens. We recognize that alien life exists on other planets, because they have done more than just flybys, but they've landed and have introduced themselves, and or something like that happens, something that changes the consciousness of our society to be thinking beyond our human, way of thinking of ourselves. We have so much hubris as the what we believe is to be the most intelligent life on this planet. And I think we need an awakening. So my hope is that it's a nonviolent one. My hope is that it, you know, whether it's aliens or, I don't know, a comet passing by that drops stardust on, I don't know what it would be, but I really want us, my wish is that we as a planet can be more interconnected. And I think we're kind of getting there. You know, the work that I've been doing, listening to Joe Dispenza, my own self-practice around gratitude, I'm listening to a lot more people talking about these things. It may not happen in my lifetime, may not happen in the next 25 years, but I do think that we're in the next 25 years, I do expect to see advancement in the human consciousness around what's possible, what we can actually do, and then we're doing it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Whew. Well, thank you so much. We crammed a lot into an hour, and I'm so appreciative of you taking time and reconnecting after all these years. It's been a long time, but I feel like we've been shoulder to shoulder on this journey together in Philadelphia. I feel like, you know, social media is great that way. It's like, oh yeah, there are these great people doing great things out there, and
exactly.
It's so good to still be connected with you, Oskar.
Same here. I appreciate it. Yeah, and congratulations on 25. You know, 25 more, 25 times 25. You know, for as long as we can exist on this planet, let's or not. Let's try and figure out how to work ourselves out of these jobs and not have to be doing this kind of work. And we have the Star Trekian society where we can just be artists, you know, and or whatever we want to be. So
you'll have that weird like the liar that that Spock plays.
Yeah,
that'll be yours.
That's my plan. Thanks, Ennis.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.
My pleasure. Yeah, it was so much fun. Talk to you soon.
Me too. We should stay in touch and do more of this stuff.
Yes.
All right. Bye.